I've tried a few dating sims now, and despite my initial hesitance that I'd enjoy them, each of the ones I've played seems to bring me a surprise. When I first looked at Find Love or Die Trying, I assumed it might be some kind of yandere-themed dating sim, where you had to find a girl to date without the others getting too jealous and killing you. Kind of like Helltaker in a way, I thought it might be a game where you just had to be very careful with your words. I was off the mark with my expectation, as the game is actually set in a dating game show of the same name, where you are the suitor and there are 5 girls you can choose from. However, there are a couple of complications from the start. 1, you can't remember who you are, where you are, or even your own name, and 2, you have to propose to a girl you've dated on the final day of the show. If she says yes, you leave together on the victory ship and go back to your life. However, if she says no, you get killed, and so do all the participants. Not only that, but none of the girls know the truth, and if you try to tell them, or try to escape, then you get killed as well. Oh, and you also have to make sure the viewers of the show are kept entertained, because if the ratings drop too low, then the show will get cut, and so will your lifespan. Immediately, this presented you with multiple conflicting goals. Find a girl you like and win her over, do things interesting enough to keep the viewers on the hook, and don't let loose the truth about the show. You have an advisor named Kat who slaps you awake and is there to explain the game to you and give you pointers and updates as you go along as to how well you're doing in the game show. It's established pretty early on that no matter how reluctant you are to engage in the game, you don't have a choice at all and just have to make the best of the situation. Kat tells you that despite there being 5 girls for you to meet, you have to choose 2 of them on the first 2 days to have dates with, and from there those 2 will be the only 2 you date from that point, and will be your only available marriage choices at the end. She also says that if you manage to complete the game without dying, she'll help you get your memories back, so it's a bit more motivation to get involved. Kat, despite being the producer, is not the person in charge of the show. The death threats come from the Fortnite CEO, otherwise known as the CEO of real-life battle royale games, Damian Black. Not only is he designed like someone who would kill you and enjoy it, but you also see evidence that he was kicked off previous TV shows for killing participants. This does a pretty good job of adding weight behind the threat of being killed for escaping or telling the girls the truth about the show, especially since it's this guy that's going to follow it through if it happens. Luckily, you don't have to spend too much time seeing him look down his nose at you because you leave the fancy jet you woke up on and go and meet the girls. Before that, you get to meet the Brothers 5, who are recurring characters through the game and have names that are numbers. They're kind of like backstage workers or maintenance men, but they very frequently get used as punching bags in all manner of situations throughout the game. It's pretty much a given in anime dating sims that there are going to be tropes involved, and to a degree this game does play on that. Some girls have more obvious tropes than others, but you can put some kind of label on each of them. After Kat tells you that she's always watching, you get to pick a place to go and conveniently find a girl in each place that you can visit. I aimed for the backyard first, but was stopped in the mansion foyer by the first girl, Yui Fushikawa. My initial impression of her was that she was the childhood best friend character, though it's more of a girl I knew from school who was in the student council in this scenario. She's a kind girl, but immediately I got weird vibes off her as she mentions there's things she wished she forgot from school that involve the both of you, she clearly has an interest in you, and also I got some minor yandere vibes off her. The girl in the backyard is Allie, a sporty girl who I mistakenly chose to jog with. This is where I found out she's basically a superhuman runner and very competitive, egging you on despite your failure to keep up. She also manages to slip in the first joke in the game that made me laugh out loud, an unexpected joke about her dad running faster when he left her. The next place was the kitchen, where I met Violet Valentine, who I was told immediately was very rich and who gave off the bossy rich girl archetype. She was telling some of the brothers how to cook, which, to be fair, seemed justified considering one of them seemed to manage to explode part of the kitchen. After that, I hit the library where I met Scarlet, a girl reading a sandwich of books, which challenges you to find out which one she's actually reading. She tries the basic act, but it's easy to see that she's actually a smart girl archetype, but is faking dumb, though immediately after you break the act, she does a runner. Finally was the games room, and I did this one last because I had a strong feeling I knew exactly what was waiting for me in this room personality-wise. And I was right. Terra the gamer girl lives here, and it turns out she's a streamer and vlogger who speaks in emoticons. She also breaks the fourth wall in seeing the situation as a dating sim video game, and makes a vow to win it. The introduction to each girl is short, and you get quickly thrown into choosing your first of the two options you get. I was actually most interested by 3 of the girls off first impressions. Scarlet I was most curious about, then Violet, then Yui, but I mainly felt some obligation to give Yui a chance since she was very interested in me, and we'd known each other before, so maybe she could give me clues towards the amnesia. I was treating the game as I would a standard dating sim, as the whole death scenario didn't really come into it yet. Since most of the dialogue is guided by the game, I quickly learned that anything could happen in the dates. I chose Scarlet for the first alone time segment, and my suspicion that she was smart was quickly ratified. I was quite interested to find out more about her. All the characters know about your amnesia situation, so Scarlet offered to help me out, as she said she'd created something to cause amnesia before, so could probably reverse it. That only piqued my interest, since it took out winning the game as my only option to defeat the amnesia that plagued me. Long story short, the date took a turn, with the brothers 5 and all the other girls ending up as monkey zombies, and Scarlet machine gunning them down with the antidote. Not how I expected it to go, but entertaining nonetheless. That night I got a visit from Kat, who invited herself into my room to check on me. She does this after every date you go on, sometimes to check on you as a person, and sometimes to check how you feel about the girls you're dating to stir up drama for the show and get more footage. When I went to sleep, I had a weird dream, where I speak to an unknown woman. She tells me I made a promise not to forget something. However, given my amnesia, clearly that didn't work out. The game then started on episode 2, and Kat gave me a hint on how to keep up those ever so important ratings for the show, by bringing someone else into the playing field. Having to pick a second date, this was going to happen anyway, and this seems to be the trend with Kat's advice. You can choose to say you don't want to do it, but that usually ends up the same way, with Kat telling you don't really have a choice. After all, if you ignore her advice to keep ratings up and they fall, then you die, and so does everyone else. The game doesn't really facilitate you making that choice, but even still. Already at this point, after the couple of conversations we'd had, I was curious if at any point there would be an option to pick Kat for a date, or if there was a way to make it happen. I wasn't offered one though, and after running through the choices for my second girl and weighing them up, I decided to go for Yui. I was worried about Terra waging war on the other girls, Violet was still interesting but seemed quite high maintenance, Ali seemed fun but not all that interesting, and I was scared Yui would kill someone if I didn't pick her, so I gave her a chance. You learn a little more about how you met Yui in the date, so it did actually come in helpful. She didn't seem too dangerous or yandere on the date, but I still felt the potential for it, and her attachment to me gave me an idea that maybe she could fight Damien for me if we ever tried to escape. Although choosing a yandere really makes life hard once they get territorial. There wasn't much consequence and the routine went the same, Kat asking who I preferred more in her evening visit, and then I was dropped back into the dream sequence. Here you start getting more interesting of a subplot, because you and your mystery woman are discussing escaping a show, worrying about if you can live on the other side, and the woman says she loves you but wants to leave where you are. I wasn't sure if they were talking about the same show I was currently in, but the curiosity about the other woman grew, and now I was feeling more of a clash from all the motives I had to balance whilst playing. Adding some perspective here, I'm going to tell you that my first run through of the game took me about 5.5 hours, so I could spend a very long time talking you through the story to give you an idea of my experience, but not only would that make this video lengthy as hell, but it would also spoil a lot of it. So I'm going to try and not be too vague, but I will refrain from going through the story in too much detail from now on. I really just wanted to give a bit of a preface of the game structure and the characters. As I mentioned at the beginning, this game has a surprise in store in terms of a plot twist. Well, not just one, as there are multiple mysterious threads that run through the midst of the story. First of all, you have the mystery of your amnesia and why you have it. Secondly, you want to know how you got into the game show, and since some of the other girls suffer amnesia too, you also want to know how they got into the game show as well. And thirdly, the dream segments, through snippets, let you know that there is a girl on the island that you were previously in love with and tried to escape the island with, but you don't know the full story or who the girl is. Not only do you have to deal with all this uncertainty, but you have to keep in mind the fact that you can't give away the reality of the game. Because you know this is TV, and you know the CEO is a murderous whack job and a lot of it is about ratings, it leaves the possibilities of what could be happening in the game very open. Many times I found myself questioning if this was all pointless, if the Battle Royale CEO who likes to play death games would just kill me at the end anyway. Would I get a no from any girl that I picked regardless of who it was? There are quite a lot of hints to begin with that make you think some of the girls are a bit crazier than they look and will kill the other contestants to win. So I was also worried that if I chose the wrong person, they may end up murdered, or that someone would say no to me for daring to date another girl despite me having no choice because that's how the show worked. What this suspicion did was make me pick up on any possible clues that I could towards escaping, since I saw a lot of abilities that the characters had or potential that they could help me in an escape attempt, so that was also influencing my decisions. Hints are dropped at many points in the dialogue towards all these things, and I developed and kiboshed a lot of theories during the span of the game. Some hints I was getting were confusing, especially in the dream segments, as it would lead me to think that one girl was the mystery girl, then a very obvious hint in the next one would relate to someone else. There was one background theory that I was pretty set on by about halfway through the game. There was a girl I was pretty confident it wasn't, and someone that I was fluctuating on that it was. But again, these hints were influencing how I played the dating game, since any suspicion I had that a girl was a double agent for the CEO made me not want to get too close to her out of fear of being tricked into breaking a rule or being sold out and killed. There was a point where Ali, despite not being one of my dating choices, jumped in to voice her suspicions that it seemed like something was going on. I wasn't sure whether to take that as an opportunity or a warning sign. Your dream sequence doesn't just linger on your previous escape, it also talks about romantic moments and dates you had with your mystery lover. Again, to throw you off, these moments sometimes parallel what you end up doing in a date with another character. To me, it felt too obvious to mean that the girl was the mystery girl, but it didn't give me any more hints towards who the girl actually was at the same time. The characters were actually written quite well, and all of them were different than their initial impressions the more you got to know them. To differing degrees in some cases, though Terra didn't change much, came a girl through and through. Though the game works in the way that all the girls you don't pick stay on the island but you don't have any dates with them, you do get to a point where you do date the remaining girls, through means I will not go into to avoid spoilers. All of the girls are likeable personalities and all have their own quirks, some being more wacky than others but all definitely different, and all enjoyable to be on dates with, especially since, as said before, you never have any idea what's going to happen. Some specialties of that being a situation where you knock yourself out rollerblading, and where you get turned into a pigeon, along with the whole monkey-zombie situation from before, which happens more than once in the game. Even the side characters like the Brothers 5 are quite likeable as well. There are a mix of environments, from the mansion outside to the library to the field, the forest, a hill, the beach, the lobby and the kitchen. They're all well designed, and though the art is a little smudgier than the character art, it's never noticeable that the styles are slightly different unless you look for it. Both sets of art are bright and colourful, and though most characters stay in the same position with only facial expression changes, there are also scene-based artworks in there as well for some of the more romantic or dramatic moments. The sound design is also done well, with sound effects to add depth to the story, like crashing waves or footsteps, though sometimes some of these are a little louder than they need to be against the background music. There's a large variety of background music too, for various tones, from the wacky crazy scenes to the gentle romantic scenes to the suspenseful mystery scenes. Again, there are sometimes cuts in the audio that are noticeable when it loops, but it's only a couple of situations it happened where it was really noticeable, otherwise it didn't ruin the immersion too badly. Overall, the game does its atmosphere well in various situations, and it makes it easy to get engaged with the story. Obviously, a major part of telling the story is the dialogue, as there is no voice acting. The dialogue is written well descriptively, it's easy to digest, and the character dialogue is realistic as it can be for an anime-based game. There are a few unfortunate spelling mistakes mixed in. The grammar is all right, but unfortunately I usually spot typos, so sorry for that, but there were a few. I found this game really engaging actually, and the dating sim aspect feels very much like a charade after your second date with the first two girls, because the mystery and threat aspects of the scenario become so much more prominent. which isn't so great if you're in it for the dating sim, but it's pretty good if you're not keen on dating sims. The mystery girl was partly predictable, but I was never fully confident that my suspicions were right until it was revealed. There were several bits of evidence through the story that fed into the theory, but there were also a lot of red herrings and fluctuating trust that helped to muddy the water. The twist about the actual game show was less predictable, though there were a couple of elements that could be guessed, again with not too much confidence. I got way more into the story than I should have done, being a grown adult, and it was also a funny game as well. There's humour written through the script, talking about suspicious homework folders on computers, being offered a ring of "you're pretty cool" as a romantic gesture, and one line being a PSA on the dangers of forest monsters. It does border on the goofy, and whilst it's not the most gritty of stories and you don't fully believe the threats all the time, it works the various tones and emotional ups and downs really well. The characters weren't difficult to get invested in if you wanted to, and overall I think it was really well balanced. If you're here solely for a dating sim, you might be a bit less engaged in the middle part of the game, as it does play a different way with the plot, but the ending ties everything together really nicely. I think it's a really good game, and so I'm going to give Find Love or Die Trying a 9 out of 10.